盛り上がってるじゃん。この曲をあんたにもっと。悪い子ね、おやすみ。
ここまでだ。氷雪をもって気づきし志し朽ちることなし。せっきゃっはっ。
盛り上がってるじゃん。乗ってる？平気よ。
ふっはっはっ。
己を解き放つ準備は反抗、陽動、霊落。
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. Here we are with Serval, the eldest daughter of the Landau family and the sister to none other than Gepard. And she is the rock and roller, the rebellious, cool, badass looking character that I like a lot in the game, and she has her own workshop and Bellabog. So all that being said, let us jump straight into the nitty-gritty. So Serval is a lightning character, which I think is very fitting of her personality and style. Very rockin', very swagger-like type of appeal and aesthetic. Love it. And she is also part of the erudition path, which means that she is part of the path that is all about multi-target AoE damage. And so they want to be used in situations where there's a massive amount of enemies hoarding you and you want to be able to take them out as quickly as possible. And so that being said, we'll go straight into her details and then we'll go from there. So starting off with her basic attack called Roaring Thunderclap, deals 80% of Serval's attack as lightning damage to a target enemy. And then the sub ability, Powerful and Resounding, basic attack deals 60% of its damage as lightning damage to a random enemy adjacent to the target. So it's actually, again, pretty simple to understand. You're doing some good lightning damage to the enemy, and also the basic attack can also do some additional adjacent damage, which can be very, very helpful, especially if you're having trouble defeating multiple enemies. Then we have the skill, Lightning Flash. Deals 90% of Serval's attack as lightning damage to a target enemy, and 45% of Serval's attack as lightning damage to enemies adjacent to the target. Additionally, there is a 80% base chance for enemies hit to be shocked for 2 turns, and while shocked, enemies will take 60% of Serval's attack as lightning damage over time at the start of each turn. Then the sub ability skill has a 20% increased base chance to shock enemies. So she is really all about lightning damage, but also that additional shock damage over time, which is really, really, really effective, especially when it comes to big tanky enemies that you just want to be chipping down. Serval is a great character for chipping out multiple enemies and just making your life a little bit easier. Now, before I continue, I wanted to show you she is currently 60 out of 60, and then of course her stats are as follows. I currently don't have her fully upgraded or fully, maxed out due to the closed beta coming to a close. Didn't have enough time to really give her all the love I wanted, but here you go and check it out for yourself if need be. Come full version though, I will be giving more love to this girl because she is definitely a fantastic 4-star addition to the game. And then we have our ultimate. Here comes the Mechanical Fever. Deals 144% of Serval's attack as lightning damage to all enemies and increases the duration of shock on enemies by 2 turns. So using her skill and her ultimate in tandem can be of great benefit as it does apply more shock, which is fantastic because again, that just comes down to chip damage, and chip damage in this game is so vital, especially in modes like the Forgotten Hall, which is akin to the Abyss in Genshin Impact for those wondering, or you could even go as far as using her in the simulated universe, which is somewhat similar to that of the Elysian Realm in Honkai Impact. So using her skill and ultimate are going to be her best tools. You can use your basic attack as well because it obviously does more, not more, but rather it does adjacent damage to a target, which can be really useful if you're low on your skill gauge. Then her talent, Galvanic Chords, after attacking, deals an additional 60% of Serval's attack as lightning damage to all shocked enemies. So this is really, really good. And this, of course, just goes right back to her skill and ultimate being utilized effectively, because this can give you an additional serving of damage, especially when they're shocked. So being able to utilize them is really, really important. And then, of course, her sub ability, Encore. Every time additional damage from her talent is triggered, Serval regenerates an additional 4 energy. So this is also a pretty good little buff here too. This gives her a chance to revitalize her energy over time, and thus allowing for you to maximize your damage through your skill and your ultimate, most notably your ultimate. And that's really a positive thing. Being able to have your ultimate ready on the fly is always really good, especially for a character who needs to be doing a lot of AoE damage over the course of time. Then her technique is Goodnight Bellabog. Immediately attacks the enemy. After entering battle, deals 50% of Serval's attack as lightning damage to a random enemy. In addition, all enemies have a 100% base chance to be shocked for 3 turns. While shocked, enemies will take 50% of Serval's attack as lightning damage over turn at the start of each turn. So now you can kind of see where her playstyle comes from. It's all about the shock damage, the damage over time. So now that we've read the skill and the ultimate, you can clearly see now that when you combine the technique alongside your skill and ultimate, which all provide you with some additional shock, now you're starting to see the recipe, turn into a nice, well-cooked meal. So being able to utilize your technique first prior to battle is really effective, as it does provide you with that nice shock for 3 turns, and then being able to maximize that even further with your skill and your ultimate is really, really good. So hopefully that's giving you a little bit of a closer look as far as the meat and bones of her details. And now we can go to her traces. So traces, as always, just like leveling up your talents in Genshin, you have, of course, your basic attack, leveling up your ultimate, your skill. Technique is already a freebie, and then you have your talent, and then you have additional branches that you can then unlock as you ascend your character. Most notably here at Ascension 5, you have Mania. Upon defeating an enemy, attack is increased by 20% for 2 turns. So that's pretty good. You get a 40% increase in your attack, which then translates into your lightning damage, which is also really effective. And you have some effect hit rate here. And the effect hit rate, of course, comes down to your shock, right? So the effect that you put on the enemy is the shock. And so by increasing your effect hit rate, this increases the chance that the enemy will remain shocked for longer periods of time. And then you have a crit rate boost, which is good. Effect hit rate, crit rate. And then over here you have another bonus ability. And this is one we read earlier on the skill page. You have some effect resistance, which is also good for her. So basically what you could be doing then, if you were to see this whole page, you can clearly see that she does get some crit rate on her kit, which is great. So this gives you a chance to then invest your time into perhaps a crit damage article, and then have a crit rate as your substat just to gain more crit rate over time. And then her light cone, really cool. I love this light cone. I really wish you could click on it to see more of it in detail. Hopefully that will be implemented come full version. But for now, it's a 4-star. It's her main light cone, and the ability is called the Power of Sound. The wearer recovers 18 energy immediately on entering combat, and ultimate damage is increased by 24%. So this goes right back to what we read earlier with regards to her building energy, and she now can actually uncover more energy through her ability and also increase her ultimate damage by 24%, which is really, really good. Pretty straightforward, nothing too over the top. It just means that this character requires some good energy, and she can do so through her light cone, but also through her abilities, through her details, of course, as I mentioned earlier, and then giving more damage to her ultimate, which is always fantastic. And then next we have her Eidolons. So for Serval, I do feel like her Eidolons play a pretty important role in increasing her damage output. Of course, they're not like amazing by any means, but they're certainly strong enough where she can do a lot of damage. So E1, powerful and resounding. Basic attack deals 60% of its damage as lightning damage to a random enemy adjacent to the target, which we read earlier in the details description. And then Encore, of course, as I mentioned earlier too, every time additional damage from her talent is triggered, Serval regenerates an additional 4 energy. So this 4 energy plus what we read earlier with her light cone getting 18, now you can clearly see why that her energy is of great value to her kit. E3, E5, as always, just upgrading your ultimate and skill. And then this is your E4, make some noise. When using your ultimate, if an enemy is not shocked, there is a 100% base chance to shock them with her skill's shock effect. So that's pretty cool too. So a lot of the time, enemies do have some effect resistance, which means they're less likely to perhaps get shocked. But this E4 does allow for you to now shock enemies for, more value. So if they're not shocked, you have a 100% base chance to shock them, which is pretty good. So I would say thus far, E1, E2 they're okay. But I think E4 is definitely a good Eidolon to unlock because it does give you a chance to shock more enemies, thus doing more damage over time. And then E6 is this song echoes through the sky. When energy is 50% or higher, basic attack and skill damage increase by 20%. So another fantastic Eidolon, I think. I feel if you were to perhaps rock her out with an energy restoration rate relic, this can be of great value to her, as this will now increase her basic and skill damage by 20%. So that's pretty good for her. And she's a 4-star character, which makes it that much easier to unlock this Eidolon. So unlike 5 stars where it might take you some time, of course, and some money to invest in a character, Serval luckily has the luxury of being a 4-star, so therefore you can unlock her if you do want to go the extra mile. So I would say out of the Eidolons, I think her E1 is pretty good as it does deal additional damage for her basic attack, which typically, honestly, basic attacks aren't your strongest asset when it comes to your overall kit, but being able to do some additional damage through basic attack is pretty good, and you pair that with your E6, and of course you're doing a lot more damage there as well. And now on to the most important aspect, and I think this is the relics. So relics, this is going to be a interesting one because with there being so many relics in the game of Honkai Star Rail already, it's going to be really interesting to see how players can come up with their own unique ideas to create the best relic set for Serval. In my case, I've gone for the 4-piece Band of Sizzling Thunder, which is the Thunder piece or Thunder set in the game of Honkai Star Rail. And then I've given her the additional 2-piece of a separate set, the Musketeer of Wild Wheat, which increases her attack by 15%. So you could go for the full 5-star, the full 5-star piece. The 5-star just gives you the additional 12% in your lightning damage. But what I like about the 4-piece is that the enemy receives 40% more shock damage from the wearer, and the wearer deals 18% more damage to enemies inflicted with shock. So as we've seen, as we've read together, we can clearly see that shock is her most valuable asset. This is where she will definitely shine as a character, because damage over time in this game is a luxury, and if your character can apply DOT, then you're obviously winning a lot of these longer sets or longer matches with more tankier enemies. So the 4-piece set is where I decided to stop, and for good reason. Of course, the additional 12% is nice, though I've decided to give her the necklace, which gives her the additional 27.6 on the 4-star piece. Now this will likely go above 30 come the golden piece, but of course you have to be above level 50 to unlock those 5 stars for the relics. But as it stands, this is pretty good for her. I think just being able to apply more shock damage and the increased attack damage via the Musketeer set, or 2-piece set rather, can be good for her. So overall, what are my thoughts on Serval? I think she's a fantastic 4-star character. Early game to mid game, she's fantastic. End game, I feel like her damage starts to somewhat wane, just because as you upgrade characters, the 5-star characters are always going to do a little bit more in terms of their performance. But that should not discredit you from using Serval at the end game. I've used her end game, and I've successfully completed the Forgotten Hall with her. And so she's definitely an asset to any team. And as far as teams are concerned, well, really, you want to be focusing primarily on building her with characters that are going to provide her with just some additional buffs. So let's go to the team setup here. So right now I've got Blade, Serval, Natasha, and Gepard. I feel like she'd be nice with Gepard just because Serval isn't that strong in terms of her HP. She does get slapped up pretty hard in the end game sets just because enemies tend to hit harder. So pairing her up with someone like Natasha is nice so she can heal, or Luocha can be nice too. This is a good option as well. Then you could always opt out Gepard, sorry, if you don't want him on the team. But I think honestly, if you can just opt for someone like, let's say, Serval Wolf to debuff, and then allowing Serval to do more damage via debuffs is also really good. But having Gepard on the team is just nice because therefore you don't have to necessarily have a healer. You can just have a nice powerful shielder to protect the team. But I do feel like having a healer is just really, really good in Honkai Star Rail. Like it's such a vital asset to have. So having Luocha here would be fantastic because everyone on the team just doesn't die. So it really all comes down to what you're looking for, and of course it all comes down to the content you're up against via the Forgotten Hall. So be creative. That's one, I think, asset about Honkai Star Rail that I love a lot, is being able to just be very creative with your team compositions. So hopefully this has given you some details, a little bit of analysis on Serval as a character, and of course some example team compositions that I feel can be really good for her. If you have any questions about Honkai Star Rail or of Serval or any other character in the game, please feel free to leave your comments in the description, or rather in the comment section. And if you made it this far in the video and you enjoyed the content for Honkai Star Rail and want to see more, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And for an extra little dollar that you have, you can become a patron via Patreon. Everything is linked in the pinned comment section. And I'll see you folks on the next video. Take care. Enjoy yourselves. Peace out.